All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Davis. I am a product evangelist here at Pipefi, and I'm excited to share our solution with you today. I'm going to talk a lot about our general capabilities as a process automation software company, but I'm also going to dive in specifically to talk about customer onboarding and sort of how important it can be to truly automate and potentially integrate this process within your organization. So let's go ahead and get started. My slides go forward. There we go. So I'm gonna just a quick agenda in terms of what we'll be covering today. So I'll talk a little bit about what Pipefi is. If you're new to Pipefi, it'll help give you kind of a foundation of why we do what we do and why we exist and how we do it. Some of the common challenges that we see in the market, I'll sort of do both general as well as very specific to a customer service or a customer success organization, how we accomplish what we do, and then I'll showcase that in a live product demo. We should have time for Q&A at the end. We will be going to the bottom of the hour, and we'll probably have a few minutes at the end for Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. I don't really plan on kind of stopping during the presentation today, but I will be happy to answer questions at the end or follow up at a later time if we run out of time today. Okay, so kind of jumping in. What is Pipefi? We use these words low and no code, and we also use process orchestration. So these are things that I just wanted to give a little context to. The low no code is the ability to drive and automate processes without having to actually be a programmer. So it's a very easy and intuitive interface that allows process automation to be built and defined. And essentially, we're trying to give and empower anyone to be able to do that. And so that typically means folks within the organization or the department where the process is typically managed. And I'll talk about why we need to do that in just a moment. But just to kind of give this full context, we're a low no code process orchestration platform. It gives anyone the power to easily automate workflows and manage business processes with no coding skill required. And why is that important? That's important because within businesses and within organizations, there are 65% of your business processes that are not currently supported by your core and vertical applications. And a core application would be something like your ERP application, SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, those types of things. A vertical application would be something more like Salesforce, which we are going to spend a little time talking about today. So for those of you who are sitting in these departments and have all of these processes that are often managed very manually with unstructured communications, tons of manual business processes, drives inefficiency, it causes potentially you to be less productive because you're spending a lot of time in Excel and in email and in your chat applications. And it's kind of frustrating. So you're spending a lot of time on these sort of low value tasks, and it's also potentially very error prone. So 65% of business processes not typically supported with any type of automation today, based on the applications you have in your current infrastructure that are supported by IT or your business department. And what processes are those? So it's really going across all departments, even though we're going to spend time in customer service today, but just a couple that I'll highlight here. Within finance, the purchase process, right? So the procure to pay process, which is purchasing requests and things of that nature. If that's not automated, that can actually cause a big cash outlay out of the organization because there's not enough oversight on some of the spend that's happening. So you have like the Wild West in spending potentially. In human resources, the recruiting and onboarding process. So that recruiting and getting people into your organization and then sort of that first experience that employees have as part of the organization. I spent time with senior leaders within HR yesterday, and recruiting was kind of their number one challenge that they were currently facing. So having a lot of automation and visibility into that process can really help drive that process a bit better. Let's get customer service because we're going to spend time there. Marketing, operations, IT, sales, and other departments like legal with their NDA processes. So those are all examples of these kind of manual processes. We call them long tail processes that sit outside of the core applications that you might be using today within your organization. And then specifically, what are some of the challenges of not having these processes automated? So focusing here specifically on the customer service department, I'm going to highlight customer onboarding. So I'll talk about this a few times, but one of the big benefits of having a process orchestrated or automated within an organization is data movement. So thinking about information going from one team to another. So oftentimes, as a former salesperson, may be guilty of this, but that you are working with a customer for a really long time or a prospect before they become a customer and gathering a lot of information. A lot of time that information does not get handed off to the customer success team or the customer service team. And so you're often lacking information. And if this isn't a structured and well-communicated process, even more frustrating, right? From a customer perspective, if it's not a structured and predictable process, it can be frustrating for them. So when are things going to be due? How urgent and prioritized is this process for my new vendor that's supporting me? And then from a kind of oversight perspective, no measurement on average of the duration of process. So this is about customer satisfaction and customer service, and really thinking about how are we doing from an overall customer service perspective within this process. So as a result of kind of some of these challenges, you're not really gaining confidence in your customer from day one as you kind of kick off this onboarding process. The manual process management is frustrating. We talked about that already. Potentially, you might be getting some low customer satisfaction, not meeting SLAs that they're expecting. And then as a result, that can actually impact your bottom line because it might affect your ARR, it might affect your customers' renewal numbers. So all of these processes that I identify here have similar challenges with similar pains. And we're going to talk about how Pipefi can help support those. So what difference will it make if we implement Pipefi for this customer onboarding process and sort of who is impacted in a positive way? I actually go from the chief customer officer all the way down to the sales guy. Sorry, sales guy, I didn't mean to put you at the bottom there. But really just thinking about the benefit to each one of these different roles is super relevant to why you should automate and measure these processes. So from a chief customer officer, just having KPIs and managing those. As the customer, I talked about the benefits there already. It's just getting timely updates about next steps, having visibility into the process, and kind of a great communication vehicle that you see in a little bit. As the manager, being able to track the activities of their team, seeing who's working on what, and kind of what their volume looks like for future planning. As the customer service person, super busy, right? Where do they need to be focusing their time? What customers need to be onboarded? Where are they in the process? Automating the communications with the customer is super helpful, and we'll see some of the details of that as well. And for that salesperson who brought that customer in, that they might be wanting to have a good relationship with that customer going forward, is seeing how it's going. How is their implementation going? How's their onboarding going? And just having that real-time visibility to track that process and that progress. And what does that implementation look like within Pipefi? So I talked about the customer onboarding process. Typically, when we start working with an organization and working with some departmental managers and directors and folks of that nature, we talk to them about what processes they have sitting outside of those core and vertical applications that might be a real challenge today. So customer onboarding is a great process to begin with because it can impact your bottom line. It could actually impact your customer renewals going forward. But there might be other processes that are more critical. So you would get started with whatever those processes are and get those adopted within the organization, and then think about, okay, what's next? What's the next manual process that's kind of business critical that I want to focus on? And that would potentially be kind of phase 2. And then ultimately what you can build up to is this concept of what we call a portal, or just kind of your overall business process platform. And just thinking about the idea of having a centralized place where you're tracking all of these processes today that might be manual. And this is kind of showcasing this within one department, but this can go across multiple departments as well, as I'll actually show you within the product. So think about a customer care portal, potentially that HR employee engagement platform portal, potentially marketing, finance, et cetera. And then really a little bit on the how. So how is Pipefi able to do this? So thinking in the middle here, or looking in the middle, this business automation and orchestration platform. So what we are doing is that requests are coming in from different systems. So whether it's via an integration of your existing core vertical systems, which I'll actually show you a bit later, or if it's just something that's coming from Excel or Word or email, or we're just initiating that directly into Pipefi. What happens once you kick off that process or that piece of work is we're going to drive automation rules, approval flows, SLA management, automated communication, all the way through end to end within that process. If it involves going into other systems as part of that process orchestration, that's great too. Integrations can happen at any point throughout the process. And really just thinking about one example in the customer service area would be if there's an additional SOW that needs to get signed, we can go ahead and send that over to DocuSign and then bring it back while we're completing that process. Ultimately, what you'll get is the ability to measure and manage. So as we roll up this data of this end-to-end orchestration, you'll get real-time reporting and dashboards, a little bit more oversight, and then this centralized process repository that you can measure in an ongoing way. And we do this in a really user-friendly way. So you'll see the Kanban view when we get into the product, but it's really about ease of use and simplicity for both your end users as well as your process owners, and then folks who are wanting to get information at that high-level view as well. We've done this pretty successfully so far. So we have over 3,000 customers globally, so in 150 countries, and you can certainly point out or identify any of the logos on here that speak to you. But I really like to just identify here that we're going kind of across vertical. So it really is a solution that can be applied into any organization, and it can be large and small. So big organizations like Visa and small organizations like some you might not have heard of before. But really just thinking about what business processes do you have within your organization that are a challenge for you, that are manual, but also business critical, that might be driving potentially or causing cost overruns, or potentially impacting your customer retention, like I mentioned with the onboarding process. And then I also wanted to highlight the integration capability, just specifically in one place here. So we will show a live integration today, but that concept of the process orchestration and integrations kind of goes hand in hand. It's just thinking about as you're defining and managing this process and automating this process end to end, there might be flow and data that has to happen with existing systems. So we talk about ERPs, your CRM system like Salesforce, your HR systems, and any other application within your current infrastructure that makes sense. Once you have all of this data kind of moving appropriately, enhancing that visibility and control of your customer operations, which we're going to talk about. And really the idea is about data flow and data redundancy. So whatever your system of record is today, we're going to keep that and just use that data as makes sense within the process, but not doing manual duplicate data entry and saving time there. And then lastly, before we jump into the demo, I just wanted to share a customer success story. So this is a large Southwest bank in the US, and their challenge was their customer onboarding process was very manual. So they were using Google Sheets and email. It was they were not able to measure their SLAs, and their customer satisfaction, frankly, was very low. They standardized their onboarding process, created automated business rules, set some requirements in terms of the implementation, have used automated email communication, and then we're able to roll that data up into a visibility reporting layer and track some SLAs as a result of that as well. Their success was pretty significant, so they got a huge ROI on their investment, and that's just based on anticipated time savings and better coordination throughout the process. They got rid of a lot of the manual work that was necessary, especially the back and forth communication, and really now have a transparent reporting process in terms of the SLA measurement across their customer onboarding. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the demo. I'm going to grab a quick sip of water. And let's get into the product. So I kind of jumped right in here to an active customer onboarding pipe, as we call them. So a pipe essentially represents a process. And you can see that defined here going across the top. So these are the different phases of this process as defined within this particular example. So clearly, everything you'll see is configurable within here in terms of the process and the data that we're capturing. And so I've wanted to kick off a new customer onboarding process for a new customer. There are a couple of ways that we can support that. So if we don't have an integration in place, you could simply come in here and click kick off customer onboarding and fill in the data. Additionally, if you wanted to share this outside of Pipefi, you could take advantage of kind of the link that leads directly to this particular process, or you can embed this code within an existing site within your organization as it stands today. If folks aren't sure and you think they want to use kind of a centralized view within Pipefi rather than having to go find the exact pipe, you can actually create a portal. So in my particular portal, I have customer request management. So these are kind of for your customer service organization, for marketing, and for finance. So it's kind of some of those specific request types I told you that we support really well within our customers. But my favorite way to pull data into Pipefi would be via an integration. I don't want to have to type a lot of information. And in this particular example, the handoff from sales to the customer service team is very critical because there's a lot of information that exists within your CRM that we probably want to know as we're onboarding this customer. So my favorite way would be to pull that data from Salesforce. So I have D&G Enterprises. They have been going through a sales cycle for a while, and we can see some of the data here. I'm not sure why that's taking a second there, but I'm going to go ahead and say this is now complete. And we'll close this to closed one and save. So we can see, so now you can see the data that's there that's been collected so far. And what we want to do is we want to copy this data over into Pipefi. So I'm going to go back into my pipe. This is going to take a second because we're running an integration behind the scenes here. So just give me 1 second. And it should be coming in now. Sorry, running integrations in real time is always an adventure. And sorry, guys. There we go. So now we didn't have a new one, but we'll go ahead and jump into this one. It'll show up in a second. So we have a new customer that's come in, and all of the data that would be coming from Salesforce is going to show up in this card. So you can see information like the customer information and the description of services. We talked a little bit about why that data sharing is so important. So from an integration perspective, this data is pulling from the CRM, and we can see that as this information is collected, we're going to have that as a history in terms of the onboarding. Now, in terms of the process, what also is happening is there's a lot of automation and a lot of rules that are defined behind the scenes here. So an automated email is going to get sent out as that new customer kicks off the onboarding process to welcome them to Pipefi. And then as I kind of move into the kickoff phase, what will happen is we're going to go ahead and assign a CSM, and we'll actually send off another email to the client, letting them know who their CSM is going to be. So each of these different phases within the process is going to have some automation and some information sharing for the client that's specific to that particular part within the process. So let's go ahead and assign me to this. And we'll say that this is now a mid-size account based on the total contract value that they spent so far, okay? And so what will happen is we'll be able to see all of the detail as this gets processed. But again, that underlying communication is also going to be very important. So when we think about what happens in the realm of an implementation process for a customer, they would go to kickoff. So we would go ahead and get that scheduled. And we would go ahead and get that scheduled. And then we would communicate that to the client as well. So the thing that's going to be important is just capturing the data that makes sense as part of your onboarding process. So let's go ahead and kick that off on Monday. And we'll say, yes, that got scheduled. So now we're ready to move over into implementation. So as I move to implementation, what's going to happen is let me just drag this up to the top here. We can see that the data fields are changing. So as I'm thinking about this as a CSM or a customer implementation consultant, what information do I want to track and what process do I want to track as part of this implementation? So in my example, I've defined an implementation checklist. So what are the different activities that have to occur in this particular phase before we can move forward? Now, thinking about Pipefi, it's a process automation engine. You're also tracking work in here. So you can do that using this implementation checklist. You can also do that by actually creating a sub-process or sub-activity associated with this primary customer onboarding process that could track each one of these as different steps so that you as the CSM or the customer implementation consultant can actually have more information if you want. So you could track it all within one card, or you could actually track it within a sub card, if you will. And then ultimately, once this gets completed, we'll move into custom review and rollout, as you can see, defined within the process. And there's more information that we're going to be capturing along the way. So if we just kind of jump over here to customer review, one of the important things that we want to track is this concept of how well we performed. So I talked about customer satisfaction as being one of the measures that we want to improve as part of implementing this customer onboarding process. So there's a couple of ways. We always think of automation where we can, and automation and communication. So certainly your customer can populate the data in here directly into Pipefi. You also can send out an automated email notification pulling this data into kind of an implementation satisfaction survey. And this is a copy of that email that you can see within here. So it was sent to me. I'm pretending to be the client as this example. And then there's a link that would bring them to a screen where they can enter the data that will get populated here, and we can roll that up. So you can see here, actually, there have been 3 emails sent to this client so far. This was the last one, but the other 2 were about kind of welcoming them and then what the next steps were as part of that kickoff exercise. The automated communication is a really critical component of driving this process and actually reducing your lead time as part of that process exercise. A couple of other things that I'll note is just this concept of visibility. So thinking about what you can see and can't see if things are a little bit busier. So one thing I like to be able to do is see everything that's assigned to me within a pipe, which you can do just very easily by kind of tracking using a shortcut key. And then that actually defines a filter that's up here. So the filtering capability is now showing that everything is assigned to me. If we clear that, we can search on other things. So we can search by product, we can search by spend, and can really just get some quick visibility into sort of specific cards within the pipe as you're within the screen itself. Within each of the different processes, we're also going to support different types of visibility at kind of a higher level. So the next level up from just the main screen would be reporting. And that allows you essentially to take that filter concept and do that in a little bit more of a real time. So I don't have to actually create the filter every time, but I can just see, I have the filter predefined. And so I can see what those are, and then I can see the detail about those. This is also a really nice screen if you ever wanted to export data outside of the system. So there's an automated export utility that will run, and that can drive you that can drive the data out to an external spreadsheet or something like that. And then lastly, we'll kind of finish up here with the dashboard view, is just thinking about that top level view. I'm going to go over here for that. And how you can have those real-time metrics and key performance indicators in one screen built into the overall system and at a click of a button. So for customer onboarding, this is my customer onboarding dashboard. I've just defined a few metrics that I want to track within here. My first one that you can see at the top, and this is sort of starting to think about those service levels and some key performance indicators. So the goal is to have our implementations take 200 hours or less, and you can see we're currently at an average of 74 hours. So we're way ahead of our goal at 270% of progress. So that's just a quick and easy measure to see. You might have a target of implementing 4 customers per month, and we've completed 2 so far this month. So we'd like to get 2 more. Looking over here, I can see I have 6 customers sitting in customer review. So we have a good chance of getting those finished over in the next week or so. So just thinking about some of the questions that you want answered about these processes that you're managing, and those can become reports within your real-time dashboard. So by segment, how long is it taking us to implement our larger customers versus our smaller customers? What spend is happening across product line? So which products kind of are the biggest winners in terms of prioritization, and other types of views that you can get in here. So really just thinking overall about the process, the automation of the process, and then ultimately the measurement of that process. The one thing that I would mention is that certainly things like spend by product line might be reports that you can get in other systems, but as the customer implementation team or the customer service team, you might not have that data at your fingertips because you're not spending all your time in Salesforce every day. So it's nice to have a system that gives you that information kind of for your own records. Okay, looking at the time, it looks like it's time for us to jump into questions. So I'm going to jump into the chat and see if we have any. And then if not, I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys to fill out a poll. And let me just do one thing here really quick. If you could just fill that out for me, that would be great. I know my demo was a great overview today, but if you'd like something that's a little more personalized for your organization, for your processes within customer service or not, that would be great. We appreciate that. And I don't think we've had any questions come in, but if anyone's going to jump off, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I hope this was interesting and helpful for you, and hope to see you on a future demo of Pipefi soon. Thank you so much.